writes for Lexi Funeral Ish, and Lexi Tatman's mentor received a 20-year prison sentence for taking her dead grandpa's organs, due to the fact that certain bodies tested positive for illnesses and were transported without the necessary warnings. Megan Hess and her mother Shirley Koch were charged with 9 charges of fraud and illegally carrying infected corpses. The U.S. Sun can exclusively report that on January 3, a Colorado court sentenced Megan, 46, and Shirley, 69. Megan received a sentence of 3 years of probation and 20 years in federal prison. Shirley was sentenced to 3 years of probation and 15 years in federal prison. According to the court's advisory guidelines sentencing range, prosecutors recommended Megan spend 15 years in prison and 3 years of probation in their sentencing statement, which was filed on December 19. According to the court documents, the plan first scammed multiple victims of money. Simply put, the defendants willfully failed to perform the contractually required cremation services for hundreds of victims and their families. The victims instead paid hundreds or thousands of dollars for cremation services that the defendants repeatedly failed to deliver. Hess and her mother frequently provided cremains that weren't from the family's deceased member, lying to the victims and their next of kin in the process. This makes the crime a typical bait-and-switch scam. The defendants also collaborated to steal the victims' bodies, which caused misery for the relatives who were left behind. This case is significantly worse than a typical fraud case in this regard. In 2009, Megan established donor services, where she unlawfully obtained heads, torsos, arms, legs, or in some cases human beings. According to court documents, some victims were horrified to hear that their loved ones' bodies had been sold on the secondary market, and that the cremains they were holding did not actually belong to their deceased family member. Later, Hess misrepresented to consumers that the body parts were given rather than stolen in order to sell them the stolen body parts. Customers were duped as well because they believed the body parts were devoid of contagious diseases. In order to prove the remains had not been exposed to any infectious diseases, Megan fabricated laboratory reports. The court papers alleged, the petition stated, Hess and Koch's conduct caused the families and next of kin great emotional suffering. Untold numbers of victims experienced unjustified anguish and emotional distress as a result of the defendants' activities, which occurred at a time when many people were still mourning the loss of a loved one. The anguish and disdain that the crime inflicted upon the victims cannot be adequately described by the government. The scam had more than 500 victims. In their appeal for a more lenient sentence, Megan's attorneys reacted to the government's suggestion in their sentencing statement. According to the court documents, Megan Hess is a damaged human being. She could even be deserving of some of the abuse she has been subjected to lately. She is a mother, though, sister, daughter, friend, Coloradan, entrepreneur. She is someone. She has a lot of admirable traits. She has a unique narrative to share. Megan Hess is only a few years away from reaching 50 and had no past criminal history of any type, her legal team stated in their defense. In 2018, Ms. Hess stopped all illegal activity, and she hasn't committed any new offenses or violated her pretrial release since. She rarely ventures outside of her house and makes a meager living by selling handmade items and crafts on Etsy. She supposedly sustained a major brain injury at the age of 18, which made it impossible for her to discern between the live organ and tissue donation industry and the organ and tissue donation created medical education and research industry, in particular, as used in her professional career. They flowed together as one in Ms. Hess's head since she found it difficult to distinguish between the two. She has stepped up to the bat, pleaded guilty, and agreed to the stated facts in the plea deal. The report concluded, she is prepared for a just punishment. No one was killed by Megan Hess. She didn't commit a rape. She didn't steal anyone's life savings. Prior to amending their pleas to guilty, the defendants entered a not guilty plea to the charges. After the sentence, which she attended, Lexi took to Instagram to thank everyone who helped put Megan and Shirley in jail. I say this with absolute hatred in my heart, she said on her page. I'll never be able to forgive, and her mom never suggest that I can find serenity. You are not familiar with how this feels, and just know that no horror film could ever be worse than this. I'll save you the specifics. Today, justice was done. I want to express my gratitude to everyone who helped sentence these barbarians. I'm sorry to any additional victims of theirs. I regret that we must put up with her awful deeds every day. I'm sorry we're all in this situation. I'm sorry this was our encounter with funeral homes as well. I hope that regardless of whether we choose to forgive, we can all find a way to live with this. Grieving will be with us forever. We appreciate the court taking the time to hear all the stories about our loved ones. As Megan, the former reality star who encouraged Lexi, 23, to become a funeral home director, was close to her, she first tweeted about the circumstance in November 2018. This local funeral provider has taken care of 3 of my family members, she alleged. She also hosted my baby shower. She also affected how I would work as a funeral director in the future. Reuters published an article about her a few months ago. They asserted that she illegally sold donated body parts. Because we had decided to donate our lives, we had reason to believe that she had sold my papa. There was an FBI inquiry and report on her funeral home, and they discovered terrible things. What seemed like such a wild concept became true. She was removing the deceased who had agreed to donate tissues and organs and be cremated, and selling their body parts to the black market. And unlawfully, Lexi alleged in her subsequent statement. The FBI was able to inform us about the sales. It fell short of what we had agreed to give. We were indignant and very certain that we did not own our grandfather's cremated bones.